French publisher Ketchup Games debuted in 2015 with the tile-laying game Sapiens, and each year after that it's released 2 or 3 titles, sometimes titles that debuted outside of France, such as 12 Heroes and Paper Tales, that Ketchup remade for new editions, and sometimes original games. For 2019, it's gone in a different direction with one release, a big box game by designers Silas and Henri Pem called Pharaon. It's a game for 1 to 5 players. Got an early look at it, sort of, at the game fair in Cannes in February 2019 when I walked around the fair trying to find publishers who wanted to present games on camera. I ran into Ketchup's Sebastian Kim, asked him if he wanted to present it, and he looked a little like, yeah, not quite sure. Too big. It's not there yet. So Pharaon is an involved Euro game with lots of interlocking strategies, and I can understand why Sebastian didn't want to present it. There's a lot going on to talk about and present, and I imagine there was a lot of development work in order to make everything work out, both on the large scale and the small, because there's lots of little details with cards and things that you are collecting, in addition to the entire game, which has lots of systems going on and lots of interaction among the players as you are trying to prepare yourself for the afterlife in ancient Egypt. Here's how it works. Here are the components for Pharaon, which suggests that I need an overhead setup so that I can hang my camera a bit higher, as not everything is in the shot, and I've zoomed out as far as possible on my tripod. There's a lot going on in this game. The game lasts 5 rounds. You keep track of the rounds on this board. You're going to score points from a number of different areas and activities within the game, and whoever ends up with the most points wins. You're preparing for the afterlife by consorting with nobles and working with artisans and tending to the Nile, preparing your burial chamber, and worrying about offerings. You're going to do lots of different things on the board. You are going to spend and collect resources in order to make that happen. There is silver, which counts as a wild resource. There are 5 other resources. There are these 5 colors. You can see them here. They are not related to the player colors, so don't think of this as the green player's area, but just the area where you will spend green resources. To take an action on the board, you must spend the action cost, which is shown on this wheel. So there's 5 regions, there's 5 resources. Each of the colors is associated with an action area. And then at the end of the round, you are going to rotate the board so the cost will change for each of the areas, and each color will be in each area once during the game. And you go clockwise or counterclockwise based on however you flip this at the start of play. To take an action in an area, you must first pay the action cost. So I must pay a green if I want to go hire an artisan. I must then pay the cost here, which is paying 3 resources of the same color. So I have 3 red or 3 black with the jokers, but you can also use this token as part of the cost for the action itself if this color matches here. So I can spend 3 green, and this counts as one of those greens. So I could just spend the 2 joker tokens and this green to count as 3 green, and then I draft an artisan. Or if I didn't want to do that for some reason, or perhaps I collected 3 red and I had no jokers, I can spend 3 red in addition to this green in order to draft an artisan. Of course, I could also wait till next round when the cost is red. I pay 1 red here and 2 more red, so I save a resource. Depends on the timing of when you want to do everything. There's a lot going on, and all the actions interact as you are playing. When you draft an artisan, you take the card, you put it in front of you, you're going to score points at the end of the game. The card itself is valuable as well, and you get some resources. So this one, I spend 3 to get 2 silver, in addition to 5 points and the card itself. This one, I get a silver and a jar. You start the game by drafting jars, which is going to give you 3 resources, which is how I ended up with this green and red over here. And you are going to use them to do these actions. So I can get a random assortment of 3 resources, or I can get particular resources for actions that I know I want to do. This gives me more, but I don't know what I'm getting. So these are the choices available to you for artisans, and you replace it as soon as you buy one. With nobles, you are going to spend the cost here, and you must spend a total cost of 1 of each color of resource. So whatever that color is that changes, you're still spending all 5 in order to draft a noble. Each noble provides victory points, sometimes a fixed amount, 12 here, or a variable amount, 8 plus 2 for each silver you have at the end of the game. Each player starts with a noble. For the first game, they suggest you start with a scribe, which is shown here. It's worth 4 points, and 4 points for each god you satisfy adjacent to this particular space. I'll talk about that later. Each noble has a power on it. The scribes will let you transmute or use one resource for another resource. So I can use red as yellow and yellow as red, which is very handy in the first game when you have no idea what you're doing. It gives you an out in order to do actions that otherwise you could not do. Other powers available. This one lets you go to the offering space, that's what the hand symbol is, and you can pay whatever color you want, not the color that's depicted here. Well, that's handy. That's super handy, which is why this is worth 12 points. Other things are handier, such as paying any resource that you want in order to get a silver. This one, you're going to, whenever you get a jar, you draft a jar at the end of the round. There's other ways to acquire them as well, such as with the artisan. Then you get a resource of your choice. So the squares mean you're going to pay. The circles mean you're going to get something. And this iconography carries through in the game where you're paying the cost here, paying this cost here. You're getting these resources. And up here in the Nile, which we'll go to next, you are going to pay the pair of resources at top, and then you get the thing that's shown below. So I can pay a red and a black, and the cost is red here. So I can pay red here to take this action, and then pay only a black because I'm paying red and black. And I get this, where I get 2 silver. So I've kind of washed my resources in order to get things any color I want by getting this silver. In addition, I get to go up on the red or black track 1 space. So this is you, I guess, flooding the Nile, making it more fertile so you can grow things. You go up 1 space. If you get to the middle space in a row, that's worth 3 points at the end of the game. The top row is worth 7. There's also benefits just to getting on the track to begin with. So this lets you transmute resources into other types of resources. I can spend red and blue to get a yellow and green, and I go up twice in the blue and red tracks. Either going up 2 in the blue or 2 in the red or 1 in each. My choice. This, I get 3 random resources off a jar that I draw off the deck. So turn 2 into 3 mystery items and go up 1 track. Okay. The burial chamber, you're just going to pay the cost on a particular the next section on the board, and if you do, you go to that space and you'll score those points at the end of the game. So very straightforward. I pay a black to take this action, and then a red and a yellow to go here. If I want to do it again, I pay another black, and I do blue-green. I pay a black, and then I can pay only a red because I've already paid the black here. So again, you've got timing issues. Maybe I want to wait till next round to do this when I can pay the yellow, and it counts for the red here. But if you wait on everything, you do nothing. That comes up a lot in this game. With the offerings, you pay 1 resource here, and you draft one of these sets of tokens. They're put out as sets, and you must draft them that way, but you're paying 1 thing to get 2 things. So I could pay a yellow to get a yellow and green. I'm up a token, but I spent an action to do that. Was it really worth it? Other things you can get, points. Each offering and each resource you have at the end of the game is worth 1 point. So you are spending points all the time by spending your resources and your offerings. But these are worth additional points. So this is actually worth 3 points total and 2 points total. And everything else that you have is just worth 1 point. These offerings relate to particular areas of the board. This is a resource to take the artisan action. It's a joker for the artisan. So whatever I'm paying, this counts as one of those resources. And you have these for each of the different areas, the Nile and the burial chamber, the nobles, and the offerings itself. So if you don't have particular colors, you can always draft these. If I know I'm going to want to get a noble, maybe I want to take this set, because then I can do a noble, I can do an offering later, and just pay those instead of having to worry about collecting particular colors. So you're going to take an action, and of course, as you take actions, these spaces will no longer be available. Each action can be taken at most 4 times in a 4 and 5 player game, only 3 times in a 3 player game, and in a 2 player game, you're going to do something where the leftover jar at the end of each round will have 3 resources depicted on it, and you block off those spaces on the wheel. So then there will only be 1 or 2 actions available. So if this were left behind in a 2 player game, I would put out 2 green and 1 blue. And now there's only one possible action that can be taken at the green space, and 2 at the blue, and 3 at each of the others. So you make the board tighter based on the number of players. So on a turn, you are going to take an action by spending the resources, or you're going to pass and be done for the round. And when you pass, you take your large token here, and you move it to the bottommost row that has no one in it, and you place it in the leftmost space. The first player who passes gets the first player marker, so you'll go first in the next round. If you take this in the 5th round, this is worth 3 points at the end of the game. And when your turn comes back around, assuming not everyone has passed, you move this over and you get a resource of your choice. And if you go around the table again, people are still in, now you get a silver. Now you get an offering from the middle here, or you draw something from the bag if you don't like whatever is available here. So the earlier you pass, the more stuff you might get if other people keep taking actions. Maybe they'll all pass and that's it. You had hoped to stockpile things for plans in the future turns, but instead you don't get much. The first player who passes drafts one of the available jars, so you get first choice of the resources here, which again helps you plan for the next round, but you are doing fewer things in the current round. So people might take the artisans you want or the nobles you want, or they might beat you to something such as the burial chamber here, where the first player who has 2 nobles and gets to this space gets the Pharaoh token, which is worth 7 points at the end of the game. And is also a tiebreaker in case people tie and score, which I've seen in one of my 3 games. So there's some things to race for, things to compete for. There's offerings available. Whatever offerings are taken, you'll refill those spots, but the other ones stay there for the next round. You're going to go until all players pass for the round. You move on to the next action space. You begin the next round, and you keep going until the end of 5 rounds, and that triggers the end of the game. The end of the game scoring relates to the gods in addition to adding up everything else. So you'll have one of those score sheets that became famous, mostly with 7 Wonders, I think of it, where you're going to tally your points in all sorts of different ways. You are going to score points for the nobles, summing up those values. Sum up the values for the artisans. Get 1 point for each resource and offering, plus additional points for these. You're going to score points for the Nile. You are going to get points if you have the Pharaoh and the first player marker. You additionally score for the burial chamber. And last but not least is the gods. This board is composed of 5 pieces. You put them together in a random order each time to create the scoring for the gods. Each god has a pair of icons around it, and this changes depending on how the board is set up. And to score for this god, I must both collect 3 or have 3 offerings in my holdings at the end of the game, and have 2 nobles. If I do both of those, I get the sum of those points, 6 points. Otherwise, I don't get that at all. So my scribe has me worrying about the noble area here because it has this icon. So if I score this god and this god, I get an additional 4 points for each of those gods on top of what's already here. I can understand why the rule suggests you start with a scribe, because it gives you some direction as to what you want to do. In addition to giving you an out with being able to change resources, it lets you know, focus on these areas here. To score this god, I need both 2 nobles and 3 artisans. And these 2 nobles cannot be the same as these 2. To score both of these gods, I need to collect 4 nobles and 3 artisans and have 3 offerings at the end of the game. And ideally, you're going to score for as many gods as possible because they give you additional points, and it just means you've done stuff. You want to score for these this one, you need 2 more artisans, so I need 5 artisans total, in addition to 4 nobles, in addition to 5 offerings, being 4 spaces up on the burial chamber, and being on at least the first level in 2 or 3 or 5 of the Nile spaces. So the more stuff you do, the more likely you are to please the gods and score those points, adding them together with everything else that you've collected, and then you'll see who wins. There's an overview of Pharaon, or more of an info dump really, because there is a lot going on in the game. You have a lot of things that work together, and you have to understand how the systems work. But as you start playing, you see how everything links together, and you definitely improve after that first learning game. I played 3 times on a review copy from Catch Up Games, twice with 2 players, once with 4 players. If you look at the scores for our first game, which I have on the sheet in front of me here, yes, I won with 118 versus 109. The next game, The winning score was 164 versus 139. So way, way better than in that first game, because you start to see how everything works together and you can make better use of everything available to you. When you play the first time, again, the rules suggest that you just draft a scribe at random. You shuffle everything else in the deck. You lay out the 3 nobles. To play for real, you are dealt 2 noble cards and you keep one of your choice. And then you shuffle the other back in the deck. So you still have some direction. You have an advantage. You have some power available to you, some way to score. Often there's noble scoring based on the number of burial chambers that you have, or the number of artisans you have, or the number of nobles you collect, or all sorts of different things, which gives you a direction for what you want to do. And it helps to have that. So in the first game, you just have the god scoring, but after that, you'll have something. And you'll be better able to see how everything works and do better. So in the 4-player game, the guy I played with in the 2-player game, well, we tied at the top because we had more experience. We knew how to do things just a little bit better, see how things work. An interesting thing about the game is when you start looking at the different elements of play, you see kind of how things work. So when you go to the nobles or the burial chamber, typically those are just resource dumps. You're going to get something out of it. Burial chamber is just straight up points. Noble is going to be some power in addition to points in some particular way, but you're spending resources and they're gone. With the offering, you're offering 1 resource to get 2. Or you can pay a second resource when you go to the offering and you draft one of the offerings from the middle section of the board. So pay 1 to get 2 or pay 2 to get 3. Okay, you're up a little bit. With the artisans, you're paying 3 to get 0 to 4 resources, depending on what artisan is available. So maybe you break even, maybe you're down a little, maybe you're up. Depends on what's there. With the Nile, you're breaking even. Spend 2 to get 2, or 3 if you get the jar at random. So you're breaking even, but you're earning points along the way. So you look at what's available to you. There's a space where you're going to get stuff. There's a space where you're possibly going to break even or get stuff. A space where you break even, and 2 spaces where stuff just goes away. So as you're trying to manage your actions for the turn, you're going to see where you want to go in which order and which things are valuable to you and where you might want to go first in order to scoop something before someone else does. Because some nobles and some artisans will definitely be better for your plans than others. And you don't want to have someone take it or someone fill up the available action spaces and then you can't go there at all. It's all sorts of difficulties as you're trying to time things, and a lot of interaction as people are taking the things you want, going the spaces you want, taking the jars that you want to draft at the end of the round. And of course, the more that you do at the end of the round after people have passed, the more resources you're giving them for use in subsequent rounds. There's lots of things working together, and yet it all works really well. There's a lot going on, a lot to think about and plan ahead for and try to make work as you're trying to succeed in all areas of the board, which is pretty much impossible. But we've had multiple games now where we've satisfied for the 5 gods. So we've done a lot of things, collected offerings, get things left over. And I haven't even talked about the solitaire game yet, and that's mostly because I haven't played. So I've given an overview of the game with 2 to 5 players. All right, collect resources, compete for actions, try to get things, score well, do things ahead of other people, take the stuff they want, especially the spaces, the action spaces, or the resources available, or the nobles, or the arts. There's a lot going on in that way. So with the solitaire game, you have 5 boards that you lay out, and this is called the traders options. You're going to put one different resource at the bottom of each board. So this will be effectively the black board, the green board, the red board, and so on. And you're going to draw jars equal to the number on the bottom, and you're going to go through this AI process of playing those jars for the trader, where it's going to gain points and occupy spaces and take things that you might have been planning to take. So you are still taking actions on the main board, and the trader is doing things where it's going to take the second noble in line, or it's going to advance on this particular Nile space, or whatever, based on the particular actions available on these cards. And if you get good with the solitaire game, you can flip them over to the more advanced side, where there's a bigger challenge there. So that's there for the solitaire players, which I haven't even got to yet. the game with more players has been a great challenge to see how everything fits together. It's always satisfying when you see that you can do better, that you feel like you're getting a game. And then you play with new people and you can see possibilities for them that they have not yet because things haven't come together. Although sometimes they know what they're doing and they work perfectly and they take exactly the thing that you were hoping to get. So there's a quick rundown, overview. Oh my gosh, there's so little time to show off these games. I want to show off everything. So, an overview of Pharaon out at Spiel 19 from Catch Up Games in a French edition with English rules available separately in a booklet. I don't know if they have distribution yet in North America. I'm sure someone will pick up this game because it's got a fantastic look to it. It's got some gold finish in there. Everyone loves gold finish. And the game's really good too.